I see the emotion in your eyes. I want to know what that is.
I mean, it's just a lot of love. You know, I love him.
Yeah.
It is very possible that all that is a lot of love in her eyes, but I think that it's much more likely that there's quite a bit of codependency and some pain sprinkled in. I recognize that I don't know T.I and I don't know Tiny, but I do want to spend some time kind of analyzing a few key moments in the interview that they did on the Red Table Talk this week, because I think that there are some lessons that we all can learn about healthy versus toxic relationships. With that said, let's hop into it. Hi, I'm Selena and welcome to Selena's Musings. This is where I like to share my thoughts, opinions, perspectives, and things that inspire me. As I mentioned, in today's musing, we're going to be taking a look at some of the key moments in this week's Red Table Talk featuring T.I and Tiny. Now, I do want to acknowledge that I'm just going to be talking about part 2, which focused on the relationship. There was an episode last week, part 1, where they talked about T.I.'s drama that he recently had, exposing his daughter's private information and some other things, aka hymen-gate. So I will put a link down below to a few videos that explore that further. I think that content is really great and it's been explored. So I'm just going to spend my time really focusing on part 2. To that end, I have 4 clips that I want to take a look at. And in here, I really want to focus on the dynamics that we see that to me show a lot of signs of narcissism and codependency. And I want to make really clear, I can't diagnose anybody with anything, right? I'm not saying that T.I has narcissistic personality disorder, but what I am saying is that I see narcissistic behavior in this interview, right? Along with some codependency on the part of Tiny. So those will be the things that I'll be pointing out and talking about how we might learn how we can pay attention to these kind of red flags in our own interactions. So with that said, let's hop into the first clip.
I feel somewhat of a philosopher of sorts. So if there is a perspective that I feel is interesting that I would like to share with people for the purpose of advancement of the generation, then I don't think that that is something that I have
Even if it goes against how it would make your wife feel. You care about how they feel more so than your wife.
No, not how they feel. No. This is about advancement.
You want to teach
this is
them.
About teaching.
You want to teach them, but make your wife feel.
But at the same time, I believe at the very time that came out, my calls were blocked. I had no access to get to you. And I had been relieved of duty as the person who was responsible to be on site attending to her needs. And I had been relieved of duty. You see what I'm saying? That. So I can't play both positions.
One of the red flags that I see here is grandiosity, which is a really grand, huge view of oneself, inflated view of oneself, right? And, you know, here he said that he's a philosopher. And I'm not saying that T.I is not a philosophical dude. I mean, yeah, sure. But to say that it is worth you disrespecting your spouse's boundaries in order to advance the next generation, come on. Like, that is way extra. We're not talking about you revealing the secrets of life or the cure to cancer. We're talking about you putting all of your relationship stuff on blast and, you know, being out there with different people while you're married and all this kind of stuff. That is not even a stretch. That's an outright that ain't it. Okay, that ain't it. That ain't factual. That is not it. So, yeah. I mean, it's even ridiculous for me to try to hear him justify this. The bottom line is that you violated her boundaries. Those are her boundaries. You don't get to say what her boundaries are. And this is where the lesson comes in for us. If you are dealing with anybody and they are disrespecting your boundaries and then trying to justify it, that is a huge red flag. I have learned in time that my boundaries are my #1 defense against highly manipulative people. Highly manipulative people hate boundaries. They want to test them. There's nothing more that they want than to feel like they have violated your boundaries. It's one of the ultimate wins for them because it's like, oh, you telling me that's a wall I can't get past? Watch me work. it's an ego boost for them. So the minute people start testing your boundaries and are really clearly disrespecting them, that is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. And, it's one thing if somebody crosses your boundaries and then you let them know, excuse me, and then they try to work on it. But if they just crossing them and just being flagrant with it and trying to make excuses and justify it with being the philosopher of the world, that's wild. And you should probably bounce. I'm just saying. Let's hop into the next clip.
When you have a man that says, don't work, don't this, I want to do this, I want to take care of everything, there's something hidden behind that. To me, I feel like when a man wants to, they want to be your all, your in and all, your be all, then that means you have less of a chance to say, I'm moving this way, or I'm going this way. You see what I'm saying? When a man completely takes control, takes care of you, you don't have a lot of say. Because you are dependent on this man.
Right.
So for a long time, because you didn't want me to work, I pretty much gave up, not trying to sing anymore, not trying to do anything.
I never stopped an Escape album.
No, excuse me. There was no escape, but there was other things that I wanted to do in music. And you asked me to not work, and you was going to take care. I said, well, I got my mama doing this, I'm going to take care of all that. And he did.
Right.
He did.
And so you agreed. That was a consent. That was consent.
So this was a word. I think that, there is a very big difference between two people in a relationship deciding that one person's going to earn the money outside of the home and one person is going to do the labor and work inside of the home, right? That can be a healthy thing if you have both come to that decision and everybody feels like their work is equally valued and no one feels pressure to give up what it is that they want to do. But in this instance, it feels controlling in a toxic way because Tiny really wanted to work. She wanted to do things in the music industry to express her art, to earn her own money and that sort of thing. And it sounds like T.I was really not with it. And she just tried to kind of roll with it. But it didn't feel authentic to her. It didn't feel good to her. In addition to this being controlling, it also strikes me as potentially a way of devaluing her, of making her feel like she doesn't have as much value, right? Sometimes we'll see in relationships where one person, maybe both people are high profile, and then one of them kind of, gets out of the limelight, and they can over time start to feel devalued or lose their sense of self, which is something that Jada then went on to talk about, how her and Will really struggled with that, right? And, sometimes this comes out of a place of how we're socialized. A lot of us have been raised to believe that the man needs to earn the money and be the provider and the woman needs to keep the home. But to me, in a healthy relationship, it shouldn't be about that. It should be about what is it that we each feel called to do? How can we each fulfill our purpose and feel fulfilled while still making sure that our household is intact? And for that to happen in a healthy way, each partner has to feel like they have a balance. And so what I would caution all of us to think about in terms of red flags are there instances where somebody is not respecting what it is that we feel we need to do to feel fulfilled, right? Are there things that, ways in which we feel overly controlled? Are we experiencing financial abuse? That's not something that she explicitly talked about being her experience, but she did say, if a man can control you with finances, that is not a good thing, right? So in whatever relationships that you have, you want to be mindful of these things. All right, let's go on to the next clip.
But
You had your say.
I
Have
got a lot more to say.
Get on in there. Get on in there.
What he's trying to say is I went and I found my own voice. He was used to saying, okay, no, we're doing this, we're moving this way. And I'd be like, oh, okay. But when he came home, he'd say, we're moving this way. And I'd be like, well, no, I got this to do. And he's like, well, that's not the way. It wasn't what he was used to. He was used to controlling things.
Wait a minute.
And, having things his way at all times. But once I got on my own 2 feet, I felt like I should have a voice too.
Yes.
And that voice, it was a little different from what he was used to.
Right.
So that, to me, is what caused the issue. Was it because I'm just being outlandishly disrespectful? Because if you recall, you could not move, you could not go anywhere. I was still in the house, like I was on probation, doing all the things. But because I had a voice that was not so timid, like to me, this is my outlook. This is my outlook on it. I feel like he felt like it's not the woman I left, and this is not what I want. I want somebody that if I tell her this, she's gonna listen and she's gonna do this the way I want her to do it. And that's what he went. He went and found him somebody that he can be like, hey, don't move, come in this, do that. And then I was not. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
Okay, this is the thing. It's not about your voice, okay? Go out there and you get the voice and want it to be loud as you want it to be. However, you must know how to use that voice. Now, the fact that you may have muted yourself.
No.
You could have always said whatever it is you wanted to say, even if that led to me saying, well, you know what, this ain't for me. Then that is a decision that that is a decision and a sacrifice that a woman must be willing to make for that voice. Wait a minute, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. Okay, I never told you couldn't say. I told you I had my list of how I wanted things to go, and you said, okay. Wait a minute. Okay, so when you were not okay with it anymore, which is understandable, you changed your mind or whatever happened. I went to prison. That caused you to, explore different parts of your voice. You can't use that voice to try to go against me. We're supposed to be together. And that, to me, I felt like maybe it was because it was so new to you. Maybe you hadn't learned how to control it yet.
It actually wasn't new to me.
Okay, so this clip was a little hard to watch. On the one hand, Tiny is talking about how she felt really controlled and like she didn't have a voice. And in the process, here T.I is basically trying to control her and mute her voice. And ironically, he said later when she was kind of trying to interject, when he was talking, well, I didn't interrupt you. What? We just watched you interrupt her to the point that Jada had to step in and tell you to let her kind of, that's just her perspective, right? And so it seems that T.I has like maybe some issues with self-awareness, or maybe there's just like a lot of tension between the two of them and he's not picking up on what's actually happening, but he's interrupting her and it's like he doesn't even see it. Right? Which tells me that while she's been working on kind of having more of a voice, it seems like it's still very much an issue between the two of them. To that end, I think the red flag that we can all pay attention to here as it relates to our own interactions with people, to me, this is really about being dismissive of other people's feelings. And, also not owning or acknowledging our role in it. At one point he said, if you wanted to use your voice, you could have. You would have just, I just would have responded how I responded, right? I may say that like, well, I don't want to deal with that. And that's true, right? That is true. But I think that, it shows a lack of empathy when she's telling you, like, I felt this way. And you're just kind of trying to flip everything back on her. Now, I'm not, again, saying that people shouldn't take responsibility for their roles and their choices in relationships. But if your partner is telling you like, hey, I'm trying to work on my voice, and you're continuing to interrupt them, it doesn't seem like something that you're really trying to support. So again, if you're in a relationship and somebody's constantly shutting you down, constantly making you feel like it's their way or the highway, and that if you speak up, they may just choose to leave, that may not be a healthy dynamic. Something to think about. All right, let's move on to the next clip.
2007, originally.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Oh, we were planning the whole wedding.
Don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember?
I don't remember planning the wedding. I don't remember that. But tell everybody. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, anyway, that didn't work out. We had
It was my fault, probably. Probably.
Of course it was.
See, that is the assumption. You see, that is the assumption. When we learned in counseling that it takes two people
Well, they say that, but I really feel
relationship.
like sometimes it takes one, because one person could be like they're dealing with it and dealing with it and dealing with it and still trying to make things work, and the other person can be just doing the opposite.
I tend to listen to the experts.
Okay, so in this clip, we have Tiny being adamant that they planned a wedding in 2007, and T.I saying he didn't remember it. And when I just see the facial expressions and the body language, I tend to believe that there was actually a wedding being planned. And what I see here is gaslighting. And gaslighting is a technique that is frequently used by folks who are highly manipulative with a lot of narcissistic tendencies to make you question your reality, right? And so you swear up and down, like, I swear up and down I said this and you said that. They're like, no, that didn't happen, right? And they try to make you feel crazy. And they use that cycle to embed self-doubt and to kind of build a reliance on them as being more trustworthy than you when it comes to your own reality. And so when it comes to how we can learn from that, again, if somebody is constantly making you question your reality, that is a huge red flag that this might be a toxic relationship. Another toxic thing that I saw in this video was him kind of flipping the script on her. So he went from saying it was probably my fault to, oh, but it takes two, when she agreed, right? And it was kind of making her feel like, for a second, safe to say, yeah, and then flip it. And again, this is something that highly manipulative folks do all the time. He actually did it a few times in this interview where he kind of flipped the script. Now, what I will say is he is right that it does take two, right? Now, it might not be that both people are, say, being unfaithful or violating the relationship, but if you are being codependent and you are allowing the person to violate your boundaries, if you are allowing them to be emotionally abusive or whatever it is, you are a part of that dynamic. Now, I want to express empathy for the fact that I recognize that it is very difficult to leave these dynamics, especially early on, because, you know, part of the trauma bonding process is creating those highs and those lows. And every time you try to leave, they have techniques that they use to suck you back in that are often referred to as hoovering when we talk about narcissism and codependency and how those dynamics work together. And so you can see, even as they're talking about the span of their nearly 20-year relationship, every time she's tried to leave, he's pulled her back in. And it's a very common phenomenon. So you have to ask yourself, how many times am I going to leave and be sucked back in? It's a very difficult process, but at some point you have to ask yourself, do I want to be a part of this dynamic anymore? And if you're finding yourself in this loop and this pattern, it may be time to bounce. Now, you know, they talked about the fact that they've been going to couples counseling and all that. Maybe they can make it work. Maybe they can do the work to transform this into a healthy relationship. I don't know. But what I do know is that when it comes to myself, and what I would advise you is that you don't wait 10, 20 years for this pattern to keep repeating itself before you make a decision to really say, it's going to have to change drastically or I'm out. And so with that said, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about the interview? Have you ever experienced these dynamics before? How do you deal with these sorts of red flags? Would love to hear your thoughts. As always, I want to remind you that you are my muses. You inspire me to come here and share my thoughts. I really appreciate y'all, and I hope you have a good one.